Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's funding event. I'm Claudia, I'm based in London, and I work in the global memberships team at Devex. I work with private sector implementers, INGOs, corporates, consultants, higher education institutional funders, foundations, and other actors and stakeholders in international development. Their aim is to attract funding, diversify their funding sources, forge new partnerships, and improve their knowledge of the development funding flows and overall the development funding space. Today, we'll be delving into how and why organizations use the Devex funding platform. I'll be drawing from two use cases to hopefully illustrate and bring to life how the Devex funding platform can help you and your team strengthen your funding and resource mobilization strategy. We'll start with an overview on how organizations use the membership, and then I will share my screen and walk you through the platform to hopefully make it all come to light. The presentation will be around 30 minutes, and then we'll leave some time for questions for you from the audience. As questions do come up, please pop them in the Q&A box. And if you're experiencing any technical difficulties, please use that same box again, and my colleagues from our support team will be able to assist. Great, so let's get started. So how and why organizations use Devex? To track and identify funding opportunities. At Devex, we aggregate tenders, grants, and other open opportunities from over 850 funders. This includes bilateral funding, multilaterals, foundations, corporates, and other non-traditional and emerging donor sources. Organizations can track these sources in one place instead of having to go to millions of websites each day. They see this as a time-saving component to their day-to-day, and they can rely on us, on Devex, and on the alerts that they set on the platform to receive all relevant opportunities to them, and then are able to focus on other aspects of their roles. Another really important reason is getting in at the right time. So this is crucial for organizations, because they often tell us that they miss out on opportunities because they haven't heard about them, or because they've heard about them a little too late, when the deadline is, for instance, 1-2 weeks away, and there isn't enough time to get together the proposal and find the right experts for it. But actually, there's quite a lot of early stage information out there. And in the last 3 years at Devex, we focused heavily on our funding activity database, which brings together that future funding news, such as announcements of new initiatives, pledges, loan approvals, as well as operational and country strategy documents from the donors. We gather all this really early stage information, this forecast information, from more than 600,000 sources. This information can be filtered, and then it makes a huge difference for organizations to be better positioned in the market. Now, another important reason is to use Devex is to partner and to do competitor analysis. As we know, partnering is a key part of development funding. It's particularly important when you're trying to diversify your funding sources or are looking to work with a funder or in a region you haven't worked in before. Members use the contract awards database to assess which organizations have won contracts with donors in specific regions in the past, and therefore are the strongest to partner on a certain proposal, but also to do some competitive analysis as well. Devex members can also access the Devex candidate database and our profiles database of over 1 million development professionals to find new contacts and partners. That database is also searchable by location, by sector, experience, and funder. Another good way to find partners and the right partners for you is using the Devex organizations database. There you can find information on over 70,000 organizations working in development. Another big reason to know their space, to have that funding intelligence, know about what funding trends there are. So it's important to know what's being pledged, what's being announced, what's being tendered by the donors, but it's also really important to have a big picture view on what the donor priorities, policy changes that will ultimately impact funding are. And then finally, to save time, I think I've noticed this before, but it's one of the main reasons organizations use the platform and the membership. They rely on us tracking their funding and delivering that information to their inboxes. So instead of visiting and refreshing donor websites over and over again each day, teams can concentrate on other priorities. Now on our sources and on the funding database sources, below you can see the number of funders that we track, that's 850, as well as the sources of early forecast information, which are over 600,000. Crucially though, we have analysts and journalists working across the globe that have that ear on the ground and that report on changes on funding policy, programmatic changes, and overall funding use. So you can have that bird's eye view on what's happening in the development funding space. So now, how does funding analysis help organizations? At Devex, along with the Devex funding platform, we have a large team of experienced analysts and journalists based across the globe that go beyond aggregating information and work on analyzing what's beneath that funding data. So first of all, we have pieces on forecast funding analysis. This is hugely helpful for organizations when they're trying to understand future funding. So what that does is it makes information that's difficult to discover accessible. Instead of going through thousands and thousands of Excel sheets and PDFs, we analyze the information and visualize it through a tool for you to easily explore. You can filter that information by country, by sector, and quickly have a grasp of what's to come. This is important to organizations to know what funding has been allocated and what has yet to be. Some examples of this would be the World Bank project pipeline analysis, otherwise known as their monthly operational summary, USAID's business forecast or the quarterly business call. We did the same kind of analysis for the Inter-American Development Bank, the African Development Bank, and other large funders that release this kind of information. Now, we also have pieces on past contract award data analysis. We realized that there was quite a lot of data that was valuable to organizations, but wasn't accessible to them. This is important because it shows trends as to how priorities have evolved for donors over the years and what their direction of travel might be. Our analysts and journalists help our organizations really understand that story behind the data. Some examples of this is Bill and Melinda Gates Awards analysis. That is an analysis of their funding over 25 years. We've also got analysis on World Bank contracts to just sort of distill trends from 2017 to 2020. Another good example is 1 decade of Swedish aid. So there's quite a lot of examples of that. And then finally, we also produce focus analysis on specific programs, on emerging donors and other instruments to shed light and increase transparency on important changes. Examples of this type of analysis are, for example, the report that my colleagues published on the rise of the development finance institutions, where they profiled several development finance institutions, a relatively recent article on leading health security donors. The team also put together a COVID-19 funding data analysis where it captured all donor announcements and pledges in real time as the pandemic was unfolding in March last year. We've also got other examples such as PEPFAR programs, USAID nutrition programs. So quite a lot there to take a look at. Overall, it's important to look at the bigger picture trends, but also being able to filter down and see what's to come in the sectors and geographies that organizations work in. Great. So you can see now 2 use cases on the screen that I will use to the platform to find funding opportunities for. We've got an INGO working in agriculture, looking to diversify its funding sources in Eastern Africa and South Asia. Then we've also got a resource mobilization team looking to map partners working in maternal health in West Africa. So I'm going to go ahead and change the screen share to the Devex funding platform and show you how organizations navigate the site to find funding around this first use case. Great. So here we have the Devex funding platform. So what you can see, first of all, here are the keywords where you can enter, the sectors and the type of funding that you're interested in looking for. You can also search by topic. So we can start by doing that in this first case and do a broader search, and perhaps we can do a more specific one for our next use case. So I'm going to go and select here agriculture and rural development. And then we also said that this INGO was looking for both funding in Eastern Africa and South Asia. We'll start with Eastern Africa and at South Asia now. You can either enter, entire regions, or you can also enter, specific countries. So within Eastern Africa, we could also select Tanzania. We'll start regionally first, though. So it's important to first assess what active opportunities there are, and then perhaps look at what's to come and the early stage information. So we'll start by going onto tenders and grants. So these are open tenders, grants, and other open opportunities from all of the donors. We haven't filtered by donor either. Just so you get an idea of what kind of opportunities there are. We can take a look at this specific opportunity, rather large. You can see the value here. You have the deadline as well, very handy here on the right-hand side. And in this case, it's a USAID grant. And you've got the background already, the purpose, and the structure. Now, you've also got the eligibility information and criteria, and also the agency point of contact. This is quite key also, if you have any inquiries before submitting that application. Any resources that the donor does publish will be under here, under more resources. So you've got the grant notice in this case, and grant specifications. Now, I've seen that there is USAID that is quite active and actually working in some of those areas. Perhaps maybe I want to take a look at, a broader look at who are broadly the funders that have opportunities open at the moment in agriculture in those two regions. And you've got, for example, the World Bank with 10 opportunities, USAID, the AFDB, GIZ, other UN agencies, ADB, BMZ, and others. So it's always good to know who those funders that are active are. Now, if I'm looking to diversify my funding sources, it's very important to know what's to come and what donors' priorities and strategies look like. And where I can find this kind of information is under here, is under funding activity. Now, I'm going to filter this to be just in the last month. As a reminder, this is early stage information. So perhaps we can take a look at this specific loan approval. This is from the African Guarantee Fund for Tanzania specifically, rather large opportunity. And you have a little bit of information. Now, the idea here is then for organizations to get in touch with the funder at the point where they announce this loan approval, rather than when there is already an opportunity or a tender and a grant. So this is in the very early stages. We have also another grant announced. There's no funding amount given here as of yet. This is for KFW and the location is Kenya. Again, information that can be strategic if you're looking to expand your reach in that region and work with different donors. Now, moving downwards again, you've got access to the program reports. This is to know what's happening, which programs are being rolled out and where. So for example, we've got an FCDO program that's currently open in South Sudan, rather large, again, 13.8 million. And you've got the opportunity structure already here and who the executing partner is, in this case, being World Vision Australia. Now, the idea here is if there is perhaps, a way that you can collaborate in this specific program, is to get in touch with either, the executing agency or, or DFID, or formerly DFID, the FCDO, to see if there would be any partnership opportunities. That's before, any tenders, grants, and other open opportunities might come from this program. And then finally, and this is quite important when looking at mapping who your potential partners are, but also who the most active donors in the region are those contract awards. And now it would make sense to remove one of these regions. So perhaps we can start with Eastern Africa and take a look at the contract awards. Now I'm going to set this to all time, just so I have a good view of who the funders are. And I'm going to go ahead and visualize those search results. So now I have, in agricultural and rural development in Eastern Africa, who the top funders are. In this case, this is by number of programs. So you've got the UN, the World Bank, USAID, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the AFDB, and others to follow. DG INPA, which is former DEFCO also. And maybe, I haven't worked with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation before, so perhaps I'm intrigued to see what they're doing in the region in regards to agriculture. And what I can see here is who received their funding. So who are the top 10 partners for Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in agriculture in Eastern Africa, and take a look and find out who potential partners for me would be, and also potential competitors. Now I could do the same for South Asia. In this case, perhaps I haven't worked very closely with, in this case, DEFCO or DG INPA. What I could do then is go back to first of all, take a look at who their top 10 partners are in the region, and then go back and take a look at the specific contract awards and the short lists that there were. So perhaps in this case, I want to sort them by publication dates, so I know the most recent ones. And I can see in this case what the consortiums look like and the short lists look like for some of these contracts. Great. Well, now that I've assessed, the situation, and perhaps Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has caught my attention, given the amount of work that they do in Eastern Africa in relation to agriculture and rural development, maybe I want to dig a little bit further into the foundation. So as I mentioned before, this is the kind of analysis that my colleagues produce. You can see here 25 years of Gates Foundation funding data. So in this first page, what you can see are the awarded grants, and it's an overview of each one of the years. So this is the total number of grants, the total number of grantees, the total value, the top grantee origins, the top programs, and the leading grantees, as well as the top 5 grants that were awarded in that year. But what we can do is switch over to the grant category insights, which is where we can actually select agricultural development in this case, to find out what the foundation's grantees and the number of grants have been for the years that we're interested in. You can see the evolution over time. So the foundation did not start by working in agricultural development, but started doing so around 2003, 2004, and it's been growing ever since. So there's been a total of 1,065 grants across 17 years, with the earliest, again, 2003, and the latest in 2020. And it accounts, agricultural development does account for 9.1% of the total grant value awarded by the foundation across the years. So what you can see here is their leading grantees, so who have received the most grants under the specific category. You have some examples, and you can, again, do some more research on these organizations to find potential partners. And then you can also have the detail of each one of the grants that have been awarded. So again, you have the value, the purpose, the grantee, and the category. In this case, all being agricultural development. So all of this is very helpful when trying to approach a new donor we haven't worked with before. Now, going back to the funding search, we are going to jump onto our second use case. This being, as a reminder, a resource mobilization team looking to map partners working in maternal health in West Africa. So we're going to start by typing in a few keywords here. So we're going to use the keywords this time and try to do a more specific search. So I've entered maternal health and RMN-CAH, which is another keyword that can help us, find that type of funding. And then I'm going to enter my region in this case, being West Africa. And I'm going to start, in this case, I'm going to start with the funding activity feed. And this is where I'll be able to find that early stage information. Perhaps I just want to learn about what's happened in the last month. And, I can take a look at some examples. In this case, being a new project launched by USAID. This is in Nigeria, rather large, again, for $64 million US. And you find some initial information about this. Perhaps if I'm looking to map out partners, I'm trying to see who is pledging or announcing new initiatives around maternal health in the area that I'm interested in. So in this case, being a new initiative, that's an announcement of a new initiative launched. This is a large partnership between several UN organizations, UN agencies, and then you've got the locations being actually quite broad. So not only West Africa, but most of the continent. Again, this is another announcement of a new partnership that could be of interest. So this is where we would capture that early stage information and those announcements of new partnerships and new initiatives. Now, as well, if I'm looking to find partners in this space, it would be crucial to look at those contract awards to have a big picture view on who the main implementers are of the projects, but also know who the top funders are investing in maternal health in West Africa. So that's where I can visualize the search again. And that takes me to, again, having the World Bank in first place. Perhaps I've already worked with them, or I've already got a partnership with the World Bank. And maybe there are other organizations that I want to explore. Perhaps USAID being one that I haven't worked with before. And then I can click again on that funder, and I will be able to see who their top 10 partners are in that region. Again, I've identified a potential partner, in this case being USAID. What I could do then is, again, rely on the analysis that the Devex analysts produce in order to see if there would be potential partnerships opportunities there. So Where I am now, this is USAID's business forecast. It's the quarterly business call. This is Q3 of 2021. And this is the way that the visualization is organized is via sectoral breakdown. So in this case, I would go and go ahead and click on global health, and then look at specifically West Africa. In this case, maybe I want to take a look at Benin, and I see that there is a family planning new activity that might be interesting. Not the largest opportunity, but something that could be of interest to me and my team. Again, you can always hover over the countries and understand what kind of programs are in the pipeline. Great. I'm going to leave it here in terms of presenting the different use cases. I'm going to see whether there are any questions from you now. Great, I can see some coming in. And we've got the first question. Do you track FCDO funding? The answer is yes, we do. And in fact, our reporter in the UK, Will Worley, has also extensively covered the DFID FCO merger, as well as the cuts to the UK aid budget. If you're interested in learning more about the latest developments in UK aid, the team created a timeline of events of the last few months that actually is very, very helpful for staying up to date with the latest developments. I can show you very briefly what that looks like, but it's up to date up to July 7th, where there were the latest news, and it goes all the way back to where I think the first casualty of one program being cancelled was, which was September 1st, 2020. So there's quite a lot there to take in, and quite a lot of information, and we'll keep you posted on any other developments. So now, does Devex, I have another question here. Does Devex track foundations? The answer is yes, we do. We cover over 300 foundations and philanthropic funding through the funding platform, and often partner with foundations on giving visibility to certain topics. Devex members can also find articles on European philanthropy, on top US-based foundations, working in development, and just really a breadth of content around private funding. So if we go onto our funding overview page, there is actually a whole section dedicated specifically to foundations and to philanthropy, which you'll be able to find here. So there's quite a bit of content there to take in. So the next question, if funding has been allocated to an agency that we can see in the program stage, how do we find the person to contact to see if we can partner with them? Right, so this maybe takes me back to the funding platform now. So maybe I can check what programs there are ongoing. In this case, there's a Global Affairs Canada program. And what you find in this case, this is a worldwide program, quite broad. And you have your implementing agency in this case, which is the Consultative Group for International Agricultural Research. You have the total budget as well, and the contact details in this case for the funder rather than the specific implementer. Now, most donors do provide a contact there, but otherwise a good way to look for contacts at the agencies would be through our people database. So organizations that work with Devex, they can click on here on Find Experts, and also from here, look for contacts specifically working with those implementers. In this case, what you could do is you could type in the name of the organization, and the database currently numbers over 1 million development professionals. So there's quite a lot of information and quite a lot for you to expand your networks. Now, on to the next question. So do we cover or track CEDA or NORAD? We do track CEDA, DANIDA, NORAD within the funding platform, as well as through the analysis that the team produces. I can give you a quick peek on how we track different funders and where you can find them within the funding platform. So if we go on to funder here, you can go to see all, and this is where you find all the funder categories. Now, NORAD and CEDA being bilaterals, you would find the first one here, and CEDA here, and you'd be able to find opportunities specifically for those agencies. If you want to take a look at all bilaterals, you may as well. So if we apply this, you will find opportunities just for those funders. Now, just this week, the team has produced an analysis on trends in Norwegian aid, as well as an analysis of Norwegian aid, top 10 partners in the last 3 years. NORAD, in fact, has recently published their 2030 strategy, and the analysis gives organizations an overview of how NORAD's budget has increased and which countries and sectors they'll be prioritizing. We also have previously published a piece on a decade of Swedish aid, which our team dove into data for Swedish aid disbursements over the past decade. They analyzed their geographical focus, their the sectors of focus, and strategic priorities, and who the main recipients of that aid were. Perhaps I can show you our Trends in Norwegian Aid article. And you've got, for example, here, just analysis of the different disbursements, the sectoral focus as well, and that's what that split looks like. And again, you can always just filter by, the year, the recipient country, and the target area in order to find out more. We've got the geographical focus as well. Very informative article. Now we've got another question. We know the EU is streamlining aid funding instruments in the new multi-annual financial framework from 2021 to 2027. How can I track opportunities related to the new Neighborhood Development and International Cooperation Instrument on Devex? So while all EU development funding will come from the same EU budget in the new multi-annual financial framework, and most of it will be channeled through the NDICI instrument. In the years to come, the EU will still be implementing those activities planned in the old MMF, so the 2014 to 2021. So in other words, if you're still tracking EU funding, you still see tenders and grants being issued under old funding instruments, such as the European Development Fund and others. So when looking at it through the Devex funding platform, again, if we go on to funder here, you'll be able to see the EU system. You can either select the whole system or prioritize certain instruments. So for example, you've got former DEFCO, now called DG INPA, you've got ECHO and others. So it's important to know that change of name as well if you're searching for funding. And I think we have time for one last one. We know that some partners and funders publish calls out of embassies. It sometimes happens that calls for proposals appear on the embassy side, but not on the main bilateral and government ministry side. Right, so both USAID and Department of State have smaller grants that are usually published directly through their embassies. And other funders, such as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands, FCDO, and Global Affairs Canada do too. At Devex, we aim to be as comprehensive as possible in picking up those opportunities. But yes, it is quite common. So there are some more questions, and I don't know that we have the time to go through them. I'll make sure to connect with you and respond to each question individually. If you're interested in learning more or signing up to Devex Pro Funding for Organizations, please feel free to contact me as well. Thank you for your time today. Hopefully this event was useful to you and your team, and have a great day ahead.